The altimeter is spinning backward. The throttle is wide open. Wind screams over the wings of the Grumman F6F Hellcat as it plunges toward the sea. Ensign Robert Burnell grips the stick with both hands. The aircraft shudders violently. His wingmen scatter above him. 3 Japanese Zeros flash across the sky. Burnell realizes something is wrong. Very wrong. He pulled too hard, too early, and now the geometry of the fight is collapsing around him. The attack angle is wrong. His speed is wrong. His position is wrong. And he has already committed. What happens in the next 11 seconds will quietly reshape fighter tactics across the Pacific. But in this moment, Robert Burnell is simply trying not to die. October 1944. The skies above the Philippine Sea are crowded with aircraft from both sides of the Pacific War. American carrier groups push westward through hostile waters toward the Philippines. The Japanese Empire, battered but not defeated, throws everything it has left into the air. Above Leyte Gulf, the sky belongs to whoever can survive long enough to claim it. The aircraft carrier USS Intrepid cuts through gray swells at 20 knots. On her flight deck, Hellcat fighters sit in tight rows, wings folded like sleeping birds. Mechanics move quickly between them. Fuel hoses snake across the deck. Ammunition belts clatter into machine guns. A chief petty officer crouches beside one Hellcat tightening bolts with a torque wrench while another sailor wipes oil from the engine cowling. The air smells of salt spray, gasoline, and hot metal. Below deck, in the ready room, 12 pilots wait for the call to launch. Some sleep with helmets resting on their knees. Others write letters home in cramped handwriting. A few stare at identification charts pinned to a corkboard, silhouettes of Japanese aircraft. Zero. Oscar. Tony. Aircraft names that sound harmless until one appears behind you with guns blazing. Robert Burnell sits quietly near the back wall. He is 20 years old. His brown hair is cropped short beneath his flight cap. His shoulders are narrow but tense. A wedding ring gleams faintly on his finger. Burnell grew up in Oregon. His father worked as a freight clerk on the railroad. His mother taught English at the local high school. 2 years earlier, he had been a college freshman. Now he is a naval aviator flying combat missions over the Pacific Ocean. He arrived aboard Intrepid only 6 weeks ago. So far, he has flown 18 combat sorties. He has no confirmed victories. His squadron mates call him Bernie, though few of them know him well. He does not drink. He rarely plays cards. Every evening, he writes a short letter to his wife. The letters never mention fear. During flight training in California, instructors had noticed something unusual about Burnell. He had exceptional reflexes, but he also hesitated. At the top of attack dives, he sometimes paused, calculating angles and speeds while other cadets committed immediately. One instructor wrote in his evaluation, "Burnell flies like a mathematician in a dogfight. Technically precise, but cautious. War rarely rewards caution." The launch horn sounds. Pilots stand instantly. Helmets snap into place. Goggles slide down. Men file up the ladder to the flight deck where the wind hits them like a wall. Deck crews guide them toward their aircraft. Burnell climbs into his Hellcat. The cockpit smells of fuel and oil. The metal seat is cold beneath him. He runs through the checklist automatically. Fuel mixture. Flaps. Gun safeties. He presses the starter. The massive Pratt & Whitney R-2800 engine coughs once, twice, then roars to life with a vibration that shakes the entire aircraft. The propeller becomes a spinning blur. Ahead of him, the deck officer signals. Burnell pushes the throttle forward. The Hellcat rolls. Faster. Faster. The carrier's bow rushes toward him. Then suddenly the deck ends. The aircraft drops for a heartbeat before the wings bite into the wind. Burnell climbs into the gray morning sky. 12 Hellcats assemble into loose formation above the carrier. Their mission is simple. Sweep ahead of the fleet and clear the sky of Japanese aircraft. If they encounter bombers, they intercept. If they encounter fighters, they fight. If they find nothing, they circle and wait. The squadron climbs through broken cloud layers toward 10,000 feet. Burnell's wingman, a broad-shouldered Texan named Kowalski, flies 100 yards off his right wing. The radio remains mostly silent. Lieutenant Commander Hayes, the squadron leader, occasionally calls headings and altitude corrections in a calm, clipped voice. A veteran of dozens of missions, Burnell checks his instruments. Engine temperature stable. Fuel pressure normal. He wipes condensation from the inside of his canopy. Then the radio crackles. Bandits. Bearing 270. Every pilot snaps his head toward the western horizon. At first there is nothing. Then sunlight flashes against distant wings. Shapes appear. 3 Mitsubishi A6M Zeros descending fast. Hayes gives the order. Combat spread. The Hellcats break formation, widening the distance between each pair of aircraft. Burnell and Kowalski swing left. The intercept begins. Standard American doctrine is simple. Climb first, then dive. The Hellcat is heavier than the Zero, but far faster in a dive. American pilots use altitude as their advantage. Strike once. Disengage. Climb again. Never turn with a Zero. Burnell pulls back on the stick. Altitude climbs. 9,000 feet. 10,000. The Zeros grow larger ahead. Hayes gives the command. Attack. The Hellcats roll inverted. 12 aircraft plunge toward the enemy. Burnell rolls a fraction of a second later than the others. Half a second. Maybe less. But it is enough. His nose drops too steeply. Airspeed builds rapidly. Suddenly the Zeros are no longer ahead of him. They are below him. Burnell pulls back on the stick. The Hellcat resists. At high speed the controls grow heavy. The dive steepens. Kowalski shouts something over the radio. Burnell barely hears it. He is no longer attacking the formation. He is diving past it. And there is no time left to fix the mistake. The Zeros flash past his canopy. For an instant Burnell sees the red rising sun insignia painted on their wings, bright against the pale sky. One Japanese pilot turns his head, just long enough to register the American fighter plunging past them. Then the moment is gone. Burnell's Hellcat is still diving. The altimeter unwinds rapidly. 9,000 feet. 8,000, 7,000. The engine screams at full power while the wind howls across the airframe. The aircraft vibrates violently as it pushes past 400 knots. Every instinct tells Burnell to pull out. But if he climbs now, the Zeros will simply drop onto his tail. The Hellcat cannot outturn them. Every manual, every instructor, every combat briefing has drilled that fact into his head. Never fight a Zero in a turning climb. Never give them the inside of the circle. Above him, the Japanese fighters break formation. They dive after him. From their perspective, the American pilot has made a fatal mistake. He has surrendered altitude, speed, and position all at once. The kill should be easy. Burnell's hands tighten on the stick. His mind races. If he climbs, they catch him. If he continues diving, he crashes into the ocean. There is only one option left. He keeps diving. But now he adds rudder. Hard. The Hellcat's nose swings sideways while still descending, carving a slashing diagonal through the sky beneath the Japanese formation. The aircraft drops below them in a spiraling arc no instructor ever demonstrated and no manual ever described. He is not attacking. He is falling. But he is falling deliberately. For 1,000 feet. Burnell finally levels out. The ocean flashes beneath him like polished steel. For a heartbeat the sky above is empty. Then the Zeros appear. They are higher now, circling and searching, trying to relocate the American fighter they just chased downward. But they made a mistake. To follow Burnell's dive, they sacrificed their own energy. Their speed is gone. Their formation broken. They are no longer predators. They are targets. Burnell pulls back on the stick. Hard. The Hellcat surges upward in a brutal climbing turn. G-forces slam him into the seat. His vision grays at the edges as blood drains from his head. The aircraft shudders under the strain, wings trembling as the engine roars at full power. The climb is steep, almost vertical. From below, Burnell's Hellcat rises toward the nearest Zero like a missile. The Japanese pilot sees him too late. He tries to roll away, but Burnell is already inside the turn radius. His thumb presses the trigger. 6. 50 caliber machine guns erupt simultaneously. Tracers streak upward. The Zero explodes in fragments of aluminum and smoke. Burnell does not watch it fall. He is already turning toward the second aircraft. The climb has drained his speed. At the top of the arc, the Hellcat feels heavy and sluggish. The second Zero dives away, trying to escape. Burnell leads the target and fires. A burst of machine gun rounds tears across the Zero's wing root. Flames burst from the fuel tank. The wing folds backward, and the aircraft tumbles end over end toward the sea. 2 down. 1 left. The third Zero finally understands what is happening. Instead of diving, The Japanese pilot turns hard, attempting to slip behind Burnell's tail. The maneuver should work. The Hellcat is slow now, its climb nearly spent. But Burnell does something desperate. He yanks the stick into his chest and slams the rudder. The Hellcat skids sideways in the air. The maneuver is ugly, aerodynamically inefficient. It violates every principle of energy management, but it swings the nose just enough. Burnell fires. The Zero flies directly into the stream of bullets. The aircraft detonates in a flash of fuel and metal. 11 seconds. 3 Japanese fighters destroyed. Burnell's ammunition is gone. He rolls the Hellcat level. The sky is suddenly quiet. His hands tremble violently on the controls. His breathing comes in ragged gasps inside the oxygen mask. The radio explodes with voices. "Bernie, you hit." "What the hell was that maneuver?" Hayes calling Burnell. "Report." Burnell swallows and presses the transmit button. His voice sounds strangely calm. "I'm okay." A pause. Then he adds quietly, "I don't know what just happened." The squadron returns to USS Intrepid in stunned silence. No one speaks over the radio. Burnell lands third in the recovery sequence. His Hellcat slams onto the deck and the arresting hook catches a cable with a violent jerk. The aircraft stops within seconds. Deck crews rush forward. One mechanic climbs onto the wing and peers through the canopy. He gives a thumbs up. Burnell nods weakly. His flight suit is soaked with sweat. When he climbs down from the cockpit, his legs feel unsteady. Other pilots gather around. Some grin. Some stare. No one quite knows what to say. Lieutenant Commander Hayes walks directly toward him. Hayes removes his helmet slowly and studies Burnell's face. "What the hell was that?" Burnell shakes his head. "I dove too steep and lost position." "That wasn't doctrine." "No, sir." Hayes crosses his arms. "You just dropped 3 zeros in 11 seconds. Burnell shrugs slightly. "I got lucky." Hayes stares at him for another moment. Then he says something that surprises everyone. "Maybe." A pause. "Or maybe you just found something." He gestures toward the island's superstructure. "Intelligence wants every detail." Burnell exhales slowly. The adrenaline is finally fading, and he realizes something unsettling. What happened in the sky felt chaotic, improvised. But somewhere inside the violence and instinct there had been a pattern, a shape to the fight, a geometry he had never studied, and yet somehow understood. The Navy would spend the next few months trying to explain it. The maneuver spreads quietly, not through official manuals or formal doctrine, but through stories told in ready rooms, through grainy gun camera film passed from squadron to squadron, and through pilots watching one another survive encounters that should have ended very differently. They begin calling it the underslung spiral. The idea is simple, though executing it is anything but. A Hellcat pilot dives beneath the enemy formation, trading altitude for speed and surprise. Instead of climbing away as doctrine demands, he pulls into a tight, spiraling ascent from below. For a few brief seconds, the geometry of the fight reverses. The aircraft that appeared vulnerable suddenly occupies the dominant position. It is a dangerous maneuver. The G-forces are punishing. The timing must be perfect. Mistakes are fatal. But when it works, the enemy never sees it coming. Within weeks, several pilots report kills using variations of Burnell's dive. Gun camera footage confirms what the reports suggest. Zeros that once held the advantage in turning fights are being caught in vertical engagements where the Hellcat's power and durability matter more than agility. No official directive orders pilots to use the maneuver. They adopt it anyway. Combat has a way of rewarding what works. Burnell himself flies dozens more missions during the winter of 1944. He is no longer the quiet rookie sitting silently in the ready room. Pilots ask him questions now. They study the angles of his dive, the timing of the pullout, the way he uses rudder to tighten the spiral climb. He never presents it as a tactic. He always calls it a mistake. "I dove too steep," he tells them. "Then I tried to fix it." But the results are undeniable. By the time winter ends, Burnell is credited with 7 confirmed victories. 5 of them occurred during variations of the same maneuver that began with that accidental dive over Leyte Gulf. The war moves forward. American carrier groups push deeper into Japanese territory. Kamikaze attacks intensify. Air battles grow more desperate as Japanese pilots fight with diminishing fuel and aircraft. The Hellcat remains the backbone of the fleet. It is not the most elegant fighter in the sky, but it is fast, rugged, and forgiving. In the hands of experienced pilots, it becomes deadly. And increasingly, those pilots fight in the vertical. In January 1945, Burnell's squadron rotates back to the United States. He becomes a flight instructor in San Diego. The war is still raging across the Pacific, but his role has changed. Now he sits in briefing rooms teaching new pilots the fundamentals of aerial combat. Dive and zoom. Energy advantage. Never turn with a zero. Students occasionally ask about the underslung spiral. By now, stories about it circulate across several carrier groups. Burnell always gives the same answer. It's dangerous, he says, and it shouldn't be your first choice. Privately, in quiet conversations after training flights, he explains the mechanics to a few experienced pilots. He emphasizes altitude, timing, and restraint. One student tries the maneuver during a training flight. Too low, too slow. The aircraft hits the water. Burnell attends the funeral. After that, he stops talking about it altogether. The war ends in August 1945. Burnell leaves the Navy 2 months later and returns home to Oregon. He enrolls in college using the GI Bill and studies engineering. He marries the woman he wrote letters to during the war. They build a quiet life far removed from carrier decks and Pacific skies. He never flies again. For decades, the underslung spiral exists only as a footnote in the memories of the men who saw it. It appears in no official manuals. It is absent from tactical doctrine. As jets replace propeller fighters, the maneuver gradually fades into history. But its influence remains. In 1951, a Navy analyst named Commander Paul Thorne begins reviewing thousands of World War II combat reports and gun camera films. His assignment is to study how fighter tactics evolved during the Pacific War. Again and again, he notices the same pattern. Hellcats diving beneath enemy formations. Sharp recoveries. Climbing attacks from below. He traces the maneuver back through squadron reports and pilot interviews until one name appears repeatedly. Robert Burnell. Thorne tracks him down in Portland and asks to meet. They sit in a small coffee shop while Burnell sketches diagrams on a napkin. He explains the dive, the spiral climb, the moment when gravity and momentum briefly flip the advantage. Thorne asks him if he invented the maneuver intentionally. Burnell smiles. I just messed up, he says. Then I tried not to die. Thorne includes the tactic in his final report. The document is classified and quietly filed away. Robert Burnell dies in 2001 at the age of 77. His obituary is modest. It mentions his service in the Navy, his career as a civil engineer, and the family he raised in Oregon. There is no reference to air combat, no mention of the underslung spiral. But among his belongings, his children find a folder filled with letters from pilots he never met. Men who flew Hellcats over Iwo Jima, over Okinawa, over the Japanese home islands. Many of them described the same moment in the sky, a dive that seemed like a mistake, followed by a sudden climbing attack from below. Several letters in the same way. Thank you. One of them, written in 1946, says simply, "You gave me a future." War is often remembered through famous aces, brilliant generals, and legendary machines. But sometimes history turns on something smaller. A pilot who misjudges a dive. An instinctive reaction in the middle of chaos. A maneuver born from survival rather than design. Robert Burnell did not set out to change aerial combat. He only tried to stay alive. But in those 11 seconds above Leyte Gulf, a mistake became a tactic, and a tactic became part of the evolving language of fighter warfare. The Hellcat is gone now. The Zero is gone. The skies over the Pacific are quiet. But the principle remains. Use gravity. Use surprise. And when the world falls away beneath you, sometimes the only way to win is to dive first.